Hey guys, Stephen here from Vanguard Tactics, and welcome back to another show. And in this show, I am interviewing Neil Kerr. Now, Neil is the head judge at the ETC. Now, the ETC is the European Team Champs, and basically that is, as far as 40K is concerned, the World Cup. So every single country that has a team sends their best 8 players, along with coaches, support staff, all that good stuff, to battle it out to be the top team in the country. Now, Neil is somebody that I've met last season at the ETC and again this year, and he has a fantastic insight onto the game, or into the game, should I say, and he's got an absolute wealth of knowledge, and I'm really excited to share this show with you because Neil goes into some really good strategies how to handle bad sportsmanship and maybe somebody that's cheating, and ultimately gives you the referee's perspective. So it just will, after listening to this show, you're going to really get a good sense of empowerment as to what to do in how you're going to handle those situations if they do crop up, which they might from time to time. I've had a couple of bad experiences, one main one really, and that's about it. And I've had hundreds of other fantastic games. So they do crop up now and again, but knowing what you need to do in those situations is fantastic. Neil also talks about some of the funniest things that he's seen in regards to cheating and all that kind of good stuff. And we also cover chess clocks and time management. So as chess clocks become more and more common within the ITC, the ETC, and competitive 40K, then he goes through exactly the code of conduct and how chess clocks work. So when you're at the table, you're going to know and feel comfortable using one, and they know exactly what you need to do with them. So without any further delay from me, we're going to crack over to that interview. But one more thing before we do get stuck into that interview, if you haven't done so already, then there is if you're watching on YouTube, there's going to be a link below to sign up for our free ITC masterclass. Okay, it's a 5-part video series where I talk you through each of the missions in the ITC to develop and how, or so that you can develop as a player and really get better within the mission pack and make sure you're being successful there. And if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, wherever it might be in regards to the podcast, then all you need to do is head over to our website, www.vanguardtactics.com, and then I'll send you a link through my email list. So all you need to do is sign up for our emails, and I'll send you a link on how you can sign up to that course through there. So you've got 2 options: YouTube, link below; podcast, www.vanguardtactics.com, and sign up for our emails, and I'll send you that over. So over to the interview with Neil. Hope you like it, and if you do, leave us a review, subscribe, and let us know what you think. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much.
Steve. Thanks for having me.
Mate, thanks so much for agreeing to come on.
Yeah, it's cool. First webcam interview I've done in a long time, so it's scary to have my face on screen.
Oh, mate. So I know you had to go out and get a new webcam just for this, didn't you? So I appreciate the effort.
Yeah, really. Nice shiny. Went into the store and he's like, "Are you streaming?" I was like, "No, not yet."
Well, mate, could be a mark of things to come potentially.
Could be.
So, mate, just for the listeners that might not know who you are and what you do, yeah, who are you in 40K? What do you do, Neil?
Well, my name's Neil. I was known as Scuzz. Long-time competitive gamer. Used to be one of the founding members and the captain of Team Scotland. And then sort of 6-7 years ago, I moved from the UK to Sweden and took a big step, obviously stopped becoming a TO, and I took a step back from gaming at the ETC. I still play in other tournaments, but the ETC specifically, I changed from being the captain, the player, to becoming the head ref. And most people now know me as the sort of the head ref, or one of the head refs for the ETC for the past 6-7 years. So yeah.
What was it, Neil, that made you kind of get into refereeing rather than playing?
It was that for many years, the ETC had a bad reputation for players. You talk to anyone who used to play back in like the early 2010s, there was a lot of cheating. There was a lot of, we'll say, it was very, very unsportsmanlike conduct, lots of gamesmanship. And you had this issue where people would be drawn against certain teams and the reaction would be, "Oh God, do we have to play them?" Which is no fun.
Yeah.
So, and I personally taken for the Scottish team in certain like matchups in certain nations. I basically engineered to take particular players to
In your
knowing that,
pairings when you used to play.
yeah, knowing that certain players had a reputation,
Mm-hmm.
and in some cases a very justified reputation, unfortunately. And I would take them for the team because I was a strong player, and also, I was like, well, I can deal with this. Let's make it fun for the other guys, because back then Scotland was still very fledgling. We had a lot of people who played ETC who didn't play in tournaments in general. They came to ETC for fun, and it was like a
Yeah.
lads' weekend. So I was trying to help out there, but I got sick of it. And Serbia 2012, I lost my taste for it entirely when there was 2 games where the referees did nothing despite seeing and agreeing that the opponent was cheating. All they
Right.
said
Okay.
to the opponent was, "Don't do that again." So you just watched him do it.
Yeah.
You've had previous opponents tell you these people are doing this, and you're not doing anything. And I just lost my temper. I was just like, no, that's it. I'm sick of this. So I wrote a big rant on the captains forum, as all these captains do. And it's basically, long and short was, I'm going to be head ref next year.
Nice.
So yeah.
Well, mate, it's really good of you actually to just step up and do that. To see a problem and go, why don't I do something about it? Because there's a lot of people that talk about doing something, or they complain about the problem, yet they never actually put themselves forward to be the solution. So I think that's a really good, an absolute legacy to leave, mate, and a really good story as to why you became, the ETC head referee. And yeah, have you ever looked back? Do you miss playing?
To miss playing at ETC, yes and no. I think it's the most competitive game you can play, and it's awesome for that. But it is a slog as well. I mean, it is 3 very long days of gaming. Can be very, very stressful as well, especially when your team goes into a round where it's like we're predicted to lose, so every little point counts. It can be quite stressful in that sense.
Yeah.
And obviously, the big appeal always to me, DTC, since DTC started as basically a bunch of guys on the forums getting together to have a weekend of gaming, and it's very social, and it's gone from being more about the social side to more about the competitive side over the years.
Mm-hmm.
But I still go. One of the reasons I go is because of the people there,
Yeah.
because of the people who come year in, year out, the friends I've made, the friends I make each year, and so being a ref lets me be more social because I actually have more time during the event to walk around, talk to people, catch up with friends and stuff. So I miss the gaming because I'm a competitive gamer and I like gaming, but the pros outweigh the cons for me, so to speak.
Nice. So a little bit what you've kind of said there about how you've seen, a few things change. How do you think the game of 40K has changed maybe over the last I know we've had addition changes, but more in maybe the mentality, the approach, everything like that, sportsmanship. How do you think that's changed over the years?
I mean, if you look at the ETC sort of a microcosm, I think undoubtedly, and without sounding egotistical bragging, the ETC has improved a lot in the past 6 years. And if you ask people like Josh Roberts, Gaz Jones, Alex Harrison, these guys in the UK or people in other countries like Tom Adrian in that, how the ETC used to be in 2008, 2010 and such like, they'll all agree, everyone agrees it's got better. The attitude has been this about, it's that sportsmanship and sort of gentlemanly conduct, being a game of toy soldiers between 2 grown men,
Yeah.
is not mutually exclusive from winning.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's very rare that I have to remind people that. When I first refereed, I was running around like stop. I was like a headless chicken constantly. All the refs were. It was a lot to deal with. And back, the first year I refereed, I penalised. One team got penalised by, I think it was 50 or 60 points in a single round.
Wow.
Which is huge.
Just like 3 major game losses, isn't it? 3 20-0 losses, right?
Yeah. Because it's just like the stuff that was being pulled, just no one. It was just unacceptable in every sense and form.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it now. Obviously this year there's been a lot of talk about Russia getting those 3 warnings, which accumulated in them not getting a point against England.
Yeah.
But those warnings were purely for time management. They weren't for sports. They weren't for sportsmanship or whatsoever. And I'll call out the Russians. Particularly, Russia used to be a team that had a bad reputation.
Right. Okay.
They're a team that people did not really want to play against.
Mm-hmm.
Over the past 5 or 6 years, they had a new captain, Alexander, Sasha or Lazio, depending who you speak to, and he has done a phenomenal job with that team. He's brought in a very new attitude of we can still be the best gamers etc, but let's make it so our opponents want to play us, because then we want to enjoy ourselves as well. And now you ask, for year in, year out, you ask teams like Russia, and all they say is, oh, they're amazing guys. I don't understand where this reputation came from that they used to have. And it's an old reputation. They do not have that reputation anymore. And, him, and then obviously the trickle-down effect to the rest of the community in Russia have really got behind this idea of, let's just cut the bullshit and win the right way, and then no one can ever question
Your ability,
why we won. So I mean, this year they got 3 time warning penalties, and they didn't at all then or after. They haven't at all questioned those decisions by refs. They also, in all 3 cases, they said, "Yeah, you're right. We should have been better. We didn't manage our time properly, and the warning is what the rules say we should get." So when they took the round penalty, they were the team that weren't complaining. There were several other teams running up to me going, "How dare you take a point away from them?" I'm like,
really?
I said, well, it's unfortunate, but it's how the rules pack works, and it's what works. But the Russians didn't question it, because they're like, it's on us. They literally, the coach and the captain have said, just so you know, we've got no issues with this. It's totally on us to make. It's on us. It's our mistake as a team.
So just on that one then, Neil, just to get a little bit more sort of context for the viewers.
Yeah.
So I've explained in previous videos how the ETC works, the pairings, the format, and obviously there's loads of that information about on the podcast. So in regards to a slow game, and obviously in ETC, this year was a 5-turn, then variable game length, so it could go on to turn 7. So what is classified as a slow game versus maybe one that, let's say you clocked out at turn 5 and didn't have any time to go on to turn 6 or 7. Is that a slow game? What's the sort of context there?
Yeah, and so this was it. This was quite important. Unlike, say, the IETC is a good example. We have the same. I mean, the ITC code of conduct just rules took a lot from the ETC, and we took from them. But what we did is one big change is we said that clocking out is not automatic. It is down to the referees to decide on a game-by-game basis.
Okay.
With a caveat, providing you're informing referees ahead of you clocking out.
Mm-hmm.
So we said absolute minimum of 10 minutes left in your clock, you should be talking to a referee if you don't think you can play the game out naturally. So in that case, you say later you get to turn 5, you clock out. Well, it's turn 5. Most of the round is over. There's not maybe much round time left. So that's not necessarily slow play. That's just, you've not managed your time, you ran out of time, but it's towards the end of the game. And in some instances, even though people are clocked out, we've looked at the table and gone like, well, you have like 1 model left or 2 models left, and there's X time. Your turns can't take more than a minute or 2, so we'll let you even continue. Because everyone wants games to end normally. They don't want clock it. They want people to lose just because the time ran out. But on the flip side, we've had, and again, a good example would be the Russia game. To the time penalties, where one of them was against England. So Manny and his opponent, Team Russia, just by the time the entire round ended, so after 4 hours of gameplay, they got to turn 2. And it's like, guys, this is way too slow. You're both slow, but you're both way too slow.
Yeah.
And so it's a case of warning them to make sure they speed up. And similarly, if you've got a player clocking out in turn 2 or 3, mate, you've done something wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
Should not be clocking out this early in the game in terms of how many turns you've had.
Yeah.
So we make it, everyone makes it clear what you bring whatever army you want, but learn to play that army fast.
Yeah, and I mean, especially at the ETC, you've got 4 hours, right? So
yeah, I mean, the UK, what's the normal UK? Is it 3 hours a round?
If that, two and a half to 3 hours for a round, yeah.
I mean, America, they play some round tournaments, they play 2 hours split between both players and get it done.
Yeah. I think, I only had one game that went to basically the end of the round time.
Yeah.
And I've said previously, I kind of wish I did actually use a chess clock in that game. But I looked at the table, thought, oh, we'll be okay. But I think for me going forward, I'm just going to use a chess clock in every single game because I come very, very practiced with my list. But I think there's also that I really like the addition of a clock because I think it gives you that mutual respect for your opponent as well, and also their time, because ultimately what you could be doing is taking up precious thinking time, right? So if
Absolutely.
let's say at the start of my turn, I take a few minutes, I sit, or maybe I review the game and think, right, I come up with a strategy for that turn. Whereas if my opponent is taking 15 minutes to do that, then ultimately I could be making decisions much faster, potentially the incorrect decision, because I feel rushed. So I think having this clock, you have to then respect your time and also your opponent's time, which I think is really important. So a couple of things came up, Neil, when I was at the ETC I'd like to run past you.
Yeah.
So one of my games, so this was in the singles. He got to like 20 minutes left on his clock, and I said to him, we're in turn 3 at this point. I said, just remind you, you've only got 20 minutes left on your clock.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay. And I said, look, if I'm honest, just do the things you have to do at this stage because we're only at turn 3. And he failed to do that. And then we got to like, I think turn 4 or the end of his turn. He was halfway through his turn and he had basically timed out. And I said to him, look, I'm really, really sorry. And actually, you guys came round to say how many minutes were left of the round. And because our game started a little bit slower, there's a bit of a communication, like language barrier at the beginning. And I said to him, look, I think I had like 20, 30 minutes left on my clock and he had about 10. I said, look, we've had 10 minutes taken off the round. How about I take 5 off mine, you take 5 off yours? Do you agree? And he said, yeah, that's fair. And I thought, okay, that's a reasonable, because we've both spent time talking in the initial stages. Yeah. So anyway, he had 5 minutes left and it got to the point of his, halfway through his shooting phase. And I said, look, mate, I'm really sorry. You've timed out now. You're going to have to stop shooting. And he then was like, no, I need to do this. I need to do this. And I said, unfortunately, I'm not trying to be horrible here, but I did warn you at 20 minutes that, just to do those things. So, and then I actually gave him a few more minutes of my time anyway, obviously in this discussion. So I think I ended up losing about another further 10 minutes of my time. So then I just sort of rattled through my turns, but it did create a bit of a, he was very negative about it at the time, but then the next day was actually said, look, thank you. And sorry if I was a bit, off with you and stuff. I think I realized that it wasn't my fault, but I think that's important because otherwise if that clock wasn't there, or if I'd have let him carry on, I'd have only got to turn maybe 4. And ultimately, if he didn't clock out, he'd have spent most of my time's game, and I wouldn't have ever won that game. He'd have probably eked out a draw, maybe.
Yeah,
or I could have lost that game.
And that's 100%. That's, I believe, in chess clocks for that reason. It's you. Like I said, your army. You should be practicing with your army at home on a clock to know how to play it in the time you're given. I mean, for me, this is nothing new. Way back in 4th edition, 3rd edition, when I was going to tournaments, we used to play practice games against like Gaz Jones and that, and we'd sit there with our phone and we would time the game.
Yeah.
Just to make sure we were playing fast, because we want to make sure we got all our turns in. We went to Warhammer World and played in the tournament. I've always practiced playing faster. Yeah. So I struggle to fathom when people haven't, and then they say, "Oh, it's not my fault. My army's big." It's like, yeah, horde armies are a thing, but manage your time.
Yeah.
And don't, you can't come back and say later, well, I mean, like the way you did it, that's perfectly, that's exactly right. You had your time and your time, players should respect each other's times.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, and the only thing is why we said as referees, like, we'll make decisions on clocking out, was just to stop. We'll say, if you're not very savvy with a clock, you don't use a clock normally, you can be gamed a lot with it. We did notice walking around players who were tapping the clock over to their opponent when it was their turn. Their opponents could make saves or roll dice. But when it was their opponent's turn, their opponent wasn't tapping the clock over to them. They were doing things and they weren't saying anything. And it's like, there is some gaming going on here. And again, I believe vehemently the 40K should not be one because of gotcha moments.
Yeah.
You shouldn't win a game because your opponent forgot something. Because this idea that it's my opponent's job to remember everything. No, it's not. It's both your jobs. You're playing a game, and you both have to remember the rules of that game, and you both have a responsibility to make sure each person plays within the rules of that game.
So, do you, in regards to that, then, Neil, is that? I mean, this is kind of a bit of a side note, I think, and I've got. But one thing I actually will quickly touch on before we move on is this. I think again, it comes down to the code of conduct, right? When do you pass over that clock? Just so you know, if you had to tell somebody, let's say they're listening to this and they're maybe going to their first ever tournament where chess clocks are a thing, when should that person pass over the time? So obviously it's on you when it's your go, but when should you be passing that time back over to your opponent to do something? What's your advice there?
In my opinion is you pass the time over whenever they're doing something. So if they're removing casualties, if they're making saves, they're rolling attacks, these kind of things, the time's on them. And the thing is, yeah, it might seem a bit pedantic, Steve, I've just killed 2 of your models, click on you. You pick them up 2 seconds later, you click back to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not pedantic because if I didn't click that and you took 3 or 4, well, which guys am I going to pick out? So I just say, get into the habit, just like a chess player. You just look at this like chess, or if you ever played War Machine, it's a Norman War Machine. If your opponent's doing something on your clock, it's clicked over to them, and vice versa back again. And if your opponent doesn't forget, and then importantly, if your opponent forgets to click it back for him. Help each other as well. Again, this is a game that I remember there's a mutual contract in this game between 2 adults, and
so
make sure you play it the way you should play it.
So let's say we're gonna give these guys benefit of doubt. Maybe this person left it on their opponent's time when they should have maybe clicked it back. What do you think? And let's say maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes is elapsed. You roughly think, with the clock being on the wrong side. What do you think is fair? Did you get a referee at this point? What would you recommend there somebody to do?
I mean, talk to your opponent. The exact thing happened to me when I was in America playing team tournament, BFS team tournament in New York. Playing the last round, playing against Justin Curtis, great guy. Despite what the internet says, he's a great guy to play against. I had no issues. And I left the clock on him. I clicked the clock over, and then he forgot to click it back. And it's the last day, we were tired. And I realized, like, shit, Steve. Then shit, Justin, this clock's been running at your time, and it's me. I said, look, it's been about 5-10 minutes. It's been about 10 minutes, hasn't it? 5-10 minutes. He's like, yes. Yeah, so I'll tell you what, you'll just run it on when the start of your turn. I'm just going to leave the clock on mine to run down for 10 minutes.
Nice.
You cool with that? Cool with that. Yeah, happy. We both finished the game with 30 minutes left on each of our clocks. It didn't matter. But again, you're adults. Come to an agreement.
Okay, so one more. I love that, Neil, and I think it's just a case of fair play, right? Isn't it? You want my approach is I want the best, and I always sort of open with this line in every game I play. I want the best general to win this game.
Yeah.
I don't want the best sly person, the best, whatever, the biggest cheat to win this game. I want the best general on today to win. And I think, I always open with that, and I say, is that something you want as well? And they'll go, yeah, I want that too. Great. We've just had a really good exchange of a point I can bring you back to, because if there isn't a moment where something might not seem fair, I'm going to ask them, what do you think is fair for both you and me at this stage? To let the best general win, or whatever it might be. And normally you come up with a pretty good solution between the two of you. So nice. So then let's say you clock out, and the opponent, then you have to still roll saves. Is that right?
Well, if we're talking ETC, then it's saves, morale, pile-ins, because you must pile-ins, and drawing cards.
What about Overwatch?
No.
Okay, because that's
now the ITC is different because you don't even get to pile in.
Okay.
I actually don't know why ETC wrote pile-ins. I can't remember why. There was a conversation a year ago about it. But yeah, so they're all you're allowed to do.
Okay.
And you can't even swing in combat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
what about if you want your opponent to swing in combat? Do you just do that on your time and ask them to? Because combat is something that you have to do if you've got attacks, right? So I'm thinking, let's say I've got the solitaire, and every one you roll against me is a mortal wound, whatever.
Well, no, because the rules say because this is one of the things that's in the rules, and it's both the ICC. When you run out of time, you can't make attacks in combat, so your opponent gets to choose which models die. Now you just pick models up. So you can just say, "Oh, these guys die, these guys don't."
Oh, really?
So clocking out is very brutal.
Okay, so even if, assuming you have that right number of attacks, right, you can't go in with a
No. I'll run my got into your 20 berserkers, and I'll say your 20 berserkers die.
Really?
So, because clocking out, you shouldn't be clocking out, and the clocking out is very punishing.
And that only happens in combat, is that right?
That only happens in combat.
But shooting phase, you still need to roll your saves.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's good to.
And it's just like in both systems. Even if you're not clocked out, you could choose to say not roll your attacks in combat, and the same rule applies.
Okay, cool. That's good to know. So I think
if you forego your attacks, your opponent says what happens.
Okay, cool. No, I like it. No, I think that's just a really good clarification to people back home that are, maybe worried about the clock. And I think all I would say, in my advice, just what would be one thing: if you are turning the clock over, just tell your opponent time to you, and then obviously they can do the same back, and just keep that respect. So I think that's really good. So earlier, Neil, you mentioned about this kind of idea of lack of sportsmanship. So where do we see cheating, and then where do we see unsportsmanlike conduct, or how would you define cheating for you? Let's cover that. Let's define cheating first.
Cheating is not using making up rules, deliberately ignoring rules in your favor. It's deliberately moving models too far. It's deliberately rolling too many dice or picking up too many dice. It's intentionally doing things that you cannot do.
Okay.
Your models kind of, it says, "Oh, I've made you roll dice." You say you fail forward and tell your opponent you pass 3 of them, and pick them up quickly so you can't see. It's it's the stretchy. It's the stretch. Oh, I'm moving him, and the tape was just there, and then I'll move him like this. This is you're gaining an advantage that the rules would not allow you to have.
Yeah.
So that to me is cheating.
And is that is cheating an intentional thing, or is because I'm sure we've all played and we've moved a model 6.5, 7 inches when he should have maybe moved 6, for example, but there was no kind of intention behind it. Where do we draw the line there?
And see, that is hard, because where is the intention? Have you intentionally moved him too far or not? It's very hard to define. Mm-hmm. And it comes down to, like you say, no one's ever going to move exactly 6 inches, we know that. But it's when you get the people that are nudging the models forward, continue a little bit further. They're measuring from the front of their base, but then placing the model to the back of the base 6 inches. So they've gained it, and that's an obvious gain there. You've not moved it slightly further. You've placed it an obvious way extra. Yeah. It's the people that will measure it, so he's in 9, and move it straight away without letting the opponent see. And then the opponent's like, wait a minute, that looked way more than 9 inches. It's these kind of things. It's a combination of behaviors.
Okay. So then let's say maybe you're playing against someone, mm-hmm. and you suspect them to be moving them units a little bit too far. I'll put my hand up. I did it in one of my games.
Yeah. Everybody does it.
In my player said, I think that was more than 7, and I said, do you know what? You're dead right. I've moved. I said, apologies, it wasn't intentional, and I just moved that unit back, to where it should be. And I think normally, and then from that point onwards, I just thought, no, I'm tired, whatever, but let's just double check everything, And because I realised I was tired, I asked for my opponent's, agreement. Mm-hmm. A lot of the time, or what I would start to do is start to measure, and particularly flyers, I think, are extremely guilty for this, because you've got a pivot point as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
And
knights as well, because the size of their bases, getting past things.
Because they've obviously got to go around stuff as well. So let's say we're playing against somebody and you're not sure if they're intentionally moving their models a little bit too far, or maybe they're just a bit loose or a bit sloppy with it and they're not really checking, or how do you think is the best way to kind of manage this environment then?
Well, like you say, you just have to non-confrontational. Don't go, oi, you far. But like, are you sure that's 6? Like, can we just double check that? that was, I think you might move a little bit too far. It's
Hmm.
important. We just check it, and you just do it in a very non-confrontational manner. And 99% of people will be like, "Oh right, yeah, not a problem. Check." Like you say, if they realize they made a mistake, someone will say like, "Oh, sorry, I'm nudging back." The 1% that get very defensive straight away, I'm not saying necessarily it is always, but that's normally normally a sign that they were aware that they were doing something wrong. They got caught red-handed.
Yeah.
So you just, you hinted on that. I've said it a couple of times. This is a game. It's a gentleman's game. You've got a mutual contract between each of us to not cheat. If you wanted to, you could play. And we talked about this earlier off the call. You could move your models extra inches every single turn. You could pick up too many dice or roll too many dice every single time. And when your opponent calls you out, you just say, "No, I didn't." And you could play a game like that, and there's nothing really to stop you doing it, apart from the fact that's not how adults play a game against each other.
Yeah.
You're not here to cheat your way to win. You're here to be the best general.
Yeah.
So I think important. When I start a game, I'm always like shaking my opponent's hand, introducing myself. I'm always like asking questions about his army, complimenting.
Hmm.
Cool conversions, cool theme. Always complimenting on stuff. Start with a good vibe, and then talk about the game. Talk about I like to play with intent. So let's tell each other what we're going to do before we do it, just so there's no misunderstandings. Just
Yeah.
I'm making a save for this. I'm doing these guys out. I'm doing that guy now. And when it comes to like taking back things, it's like, well, this becomes a big question. When do you take things back? It's like, well, just if the intent was clear what was meant to happen and the opponent forgot, let them do it.
Okay.
And come to that agreement with your opponents beforehand, and you'll find that most problems disappear from a game.
So, I mean, what would be so let's say we're in the movement phase, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and you've moved a model,
Yeah.
and then your opponent goes, or you want to, actually, I don't want to put him there.
Yeah.
I want to remove him. And let's say it is it could be anything, right?
Yeah.
Unless you are 100% sure of where that model was originally, which is why when I use my flyers, and if I ever play somebody with flyers, I say, I'm going to put this dice on your 12 o'clock of your base.
Yeah.
So if you want, you can move back there and we'll always know your 90-degree angle. What would be your kind of advice there? Let's say they've moved them, they want to remove them, and you think, actually, maybe that's a lot further than they originally had, and you can't, between the two of you, know exactly where that model was. What would be your advice there?
Well, my advice, to the person who's removing, like you say, intentionally not, you'll end up gaining or losing the position they're in. So before you move, just measure the model out. And this is why, people always fluff it. I always have spare bases. I have spare bases, little sticks stuck on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll put that there where I'm going to move to.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, and you can check. Oh yeah, it is 6. Oh no, I don't want to go there. I want to go here. If you're not 100% and you're going to start humming and hawing, don't move the models in the first place till you know where you're going. Like I say, I wouldn't even put a dice where the model is going, where the model was. I would put a dice where the model is going to be, because then there's no arguments about until you finally say, yeah, that's where I want to be. And then with things like flyers and knights, I have a spare knight base, so a completely blank base, because we know trying to get the knights in position round corners can be really fiddly.
Yeah.
And so I have the knight just stays where it is, and I have a blank base to check, and that's very simple.
Yeah.
I think.
I like it. So in regards to thinking, let's say you're having a really bad game, and like we are talking about the 1% here, right?
Yeah.
But I want people to feel, after watching this or listening to this recording, that they feel like, actually, I know how to handle this situation because the information Neil and Steve have given me, or I know when to call a referee. So let's say you're having a really bad game. You've told this guy once that I think you've moved that too far. And let's say they go, oh, okay, sorry, and they move it back. But before you know it, you've had to remind them, literally a few times later in the charge phase, then it's in the shooting phase, there's something, and it's like a constant battle. And you feel like something's not working here. Like, because you kind of know this experience, and we've probably all felt it. And you can't outright say you're a cheat, because you've got no evidence for it. And you don't know if they were intentionally doing this stuff or there's just how they play. What would you do at this point? Would you go get a TO? What would you say to the TO as well at that point?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not happy with what's happening on the board, you're sat there thinking to yourself, like, I'm not comfortable with this, I'm unhappy with this, and you've told your opponent and nothing's changing, and then 100% at that point you go get the TO, you get the judge. And the best thing is you explain to them what you're unhappy with, and try, don't be like this. On a table, I feel like my opponent is doing X, Y, Z,
Mm-hmm.
and then encourage the TO. Would you mind watching for a while and bring the TO back, and just let the TO hang there, And to lead the table, you can just say to your opponent, "Sorry, I really need to take a leak. I need to go to the toilet for a minute. Is that okay? Clock on me." And then your opponent's not even being there. Your opponent doesn't know what you're doing, so it's not confrontation directly. And the TO can come, and then hopefully, the TO won't come ahead and go, "Oh, you," straight away. He'll look at things and he'll ask questions and try to resolve it that way. Because again,
Okay.
most of the time it's misunderstandings. Most of the time it's unintentional. Most of the time it's misunderstandings.
Yeah.
But don't ever be if you feel like your opponent's doing things they shouldn't be able to do. Don't ever be afraid to go get someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. And if you're at a tournament, your mates are hanging around your tables, get your mate to go grab them or whatever. Because the only way to get rid of the 1% that deliberately do it is to, slap them on the wrist and make everyone aware that they're doing this.
Yeah.
Rather than sitting there steaming and stewing, and then after the game, you're sat in the pub with your mates going, "Oh, this bloody guy, he did this, he did that." Well, why didn't you tell anyone?
Yeah.
Because I've had that so many times as a referee at ETC. People come to me like on the Sunday evening after the event's over and go, "Oh, in game 2, I play." Well, why didn't you tell me?
Yeah.
2 days ago, you could have told me this.
So what?
Um,
So your
I mean,
advice there is to basically nip this in the bud and go and tell a
yeah,
TO, because I
yeah.
think in
If you,
I was going to say confrontation isn't something that everybody is happy with, right? And I'm not
no,
talking about walking up to someone and punching them around the face, whatever. I'm not talking that type of confrontation. I just
no,
mean even saying to someone, "I'm really sorry, but I think you've moved that too far," or "I don't think that's how that's played," or "I'll be honest with you, mate, I'm having a really bad game here because I don't like the way this is happening." That is a form of confrontation, and I think sometimes as well, then in our community, that people can be worried to then go and tell a TO so and so, because they don't want to feel like a telltale or a tell tit or whatever, and they don't even know themselves. Is it them cheating, or is it them just being like, that's maybe just how they play, and maybe you're just upset you lost or whatever. But unless you bring it to the TO's attention, look, this happened in my game, I wasn't happy with it, and then if then the TO gets another 4 complaints, then he's obviously cheating.
exactly. And this one, a good example was, I believe, I don't know, it was your game or one of your guys on the UN team, and they had an issue with their opponent, and he raised it with. I think it was you who raised it with me. I was like, okay, it's the first time I've heard this,
Mm-hmm.
so all I'll do is just like gently remind the guy, don't do that again. And then if there's no punishment, because if it's like you say, it might not be a thing. But then if the trend sets in,
Yeah.
and this is why the ETC, for example, we track things, we track cards across multiple years to
Mm-hmm.
track people to see if is this a one-off or is this a consistent behavior problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so it isn't easy. I mean, you and me were both people with sporting backgrounds and such like, we're used to this adversarial confrontation, you could say, a friendly confrontation on a pitch or something. Not everyone is in our hobby. A lot of people aren't in our hobby that way. But you've got to be able to say no.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you're in a restaurant and the guy brings you the wrong the waiter brings you the food you didn't order, the wrong food, are you going to sit there and eat it? Or are you going to say to him, And you do feel uncomfortable saying it. I mean, as a referee, no matter how many times I say to people, "You're out of line," I don't feel happy about doing it. I'm actually quite uncomfortable doing it because it's not a pleasant experience for either person to telling somebody off isn't fun.
Yeah.
Um, but you can't go around afterwards complaining about that this tournament sucks or this play this and that if you never tried to get it sorted yourself.
Yeah.
As hard as that is, you got to put your hand up and say, judge, ref, or go grab and say, "Have you got a minute? you just help me out with this game, please, for a minute?
Yeah, because I think you mentioned a really good point there. Like, I played a lot of sport when I was younger, into quite a decent level. And if something happens, it happens right there, right then.
Yeah.
You can't get around it. Do you know what I mean? So it's happened. It's nipped in the bud. You carry on. You shake each other's hands. That's it. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's a really interesting point that you just go, right, let's bring this up straight away with a TO. And I think that's really good advice, Neil. So yeah, nice. I like it. So what are some of the, out of interest, what are some of the worst offences you've seen over the course of your years of refereeing? Let's just have a bit of fun with this. You don't have to mention any names, but
no,
yeah.
but loaded dice. Obviously, this year you yourself saw the die that there was a person.
Yeah,
it wasn't with your opponents, obviously, to clarify, but there was a person with loaded die, and it was so obvious it was loaded. Where even when you held the thing, it weighed a ton.
Yeah.
I think you asked me how do you test this if it's loaded. I just threw it over my shoulder and said, "Is that a 6?" And it was.
Yeah.
It's so blatant. That's the first.
I remember you coming round, Neil, saying if I roll a 6, you've got to buy me 2 drinks, and any other result, I'll buy you one. And I thought, was your dice loaded? And he said, "Well, how did you know?"
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that was me going around. That was quite funny because I was doing that because I was only telling the captains.
Yeah.
I was doing it to all the captains in a kind of joking manner,
Mm-hmm.
just because the minute I say someone's got a loaded dice, no offense, you players, ETC captains and players, they're like chickens going, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, and they all run around in like a panic and a flutter. So that's why I was doing it in that way to kind of make it a bit of a joke.
Yeah.
Because it'd been dealt with, and it was all sorted and teed off. But yeah, and that's not the first time.
So what was
in Athens as well? There was a guy with loaded dice, and he was caught, or we'll say he was not caught, but it was raised and shown to us by referees by the old Italian captain Daniele Giemme, whose nickname is the Terminator because he's built like that, and he just went, "No, grab these dice off the sky." Marched up to him, went, "These are loaded." And it was a case of this guy had a load of dice, and some of them were ever so slightly different from the others. And they were the ones his lucky dice he was picking. And Danielle watched this guy keep picking these dice out to make saves. So and lo and behold, he was rolling really high all the time.
So what are the telltale signs in Neil of somebody that might have some funky weird dice?
Funky weird dice. They don't let you use them.
Okay.
Or they spend ages going, "Oh, I'm looking for my lucky die," and that lucky die always seems to miraculously get the result they want.
Mm-hmm.
I've said this to you. I've said it to a lot of people. If someone who will say blatantly cheat by bringing a loaded die to an event, let's face it, they're stupid. If you're stupid enough to think you can get away with that, you're also too stupid to hide what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that guy, the dice I saw that you had was it was glittery and it was massive and it was literally a beacon of pick me up and roll me because it was just, I've got a comedy dice I bought for Vanguard Tactics, right? And it's massive, right? Because I just wanted to be able to hold it in a picture where you could see the logo.
Yeah.
But it's literally, it was that size. It was huge.
Oh, but all his dice were big. All his dice were big. He was playing with the big casino dice.
Okay.
So all his die work is big casino die. Mm-hmm. Apart from that one, which is made of wood.
Yeah.
So it also looked different. And it's these kind of little things. I mean, there's a joke amongst all my friends here in Sweden, especially my friends Jocke and Max, that they go flame on dice and battle of the chumps dice. Because whenever I roll dice, I never fail 3-up saves with these dice that say flame on them. I do, but their perception, I'm always rolling well with them, and they're like, use some other dice. Like this is a joke. You have your club dice, team dice, you just grab a pile and you throw them. Because when you see people sifting through, going, "Oh right, I need to find my Donald Trump dice for this particular." Oh look, I got to say,
or if they're rolling dice individually when they could just speed roll, right?
Yeah, and that was a thing back in the day when you could make armor saves individually. Sorry, when you could make armor saves individually.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, it was a big deal. You had your character tanking on the 2-up the rest of the unit.
Yeah.
And obviously, to speed the game up, you roll as many dice as he had wounds.
Yeah.
But at times, he's got 1 wound left. And I was like, time for do you mind for me a bit dramatic? I want to roll 1 at a time now for drama. Yeah. Just because you've got time on the clock and it's a laugh and it's drama. But when you get people that are insisting on doing it all the time, you're like, mate, you just roll them like in groups to speed things up, and they're insisting. And when people insist on doing something that's quite needless,
Mm-hmm.
then to me alarm bells are ringing.
Yeah.
It's like, do you really have to? Can I? Well, they make all that. They roll a load of wounds, and you go, "Oh, can I just use your dice?" And they go, "No, no, no." It's like, well, I get people superstitious about their dice, but let's be real about it.
It's a random number generator, isn't it?
It's a random number generator, and when you start being very protective of your dice and all these kind of things, even unintentionally, it sends the wrong signals. You combine that with other factors. It's like these are the things we look for. I mean, there was even a dice we found. There was a player who found it in his collection. When he realized what it was, he like freaked out straight away. He found a die that had 2 3s on it.
Okay.
It had been modified. Someone had got the side of a 2. They drilled an indentation and painted to make it look like a 3. And it turns out he'd actually been at a tournament a few weeks ago, and this was dice from a group of people at that tournament. And he was like, "Look, I genuinely didn't realize that this dice was like this. I was given it."
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a little bit of investigation's been done, and yeah, it's turned out that there was a person at this event that had, instead of it not loading it, but increasing that odds of not rolling a 2 by removing the 2 from the dice, which is a big deal if you're playing certain armies.
Yeah.
So there is that kind of shit that happens, and it's just, if it beggars my belief that why people have been bothered to do it, because you can get away with it until when you're caught, and once you're caught, your hobby is dead.
Yeah, I just don't see the point in it, right? Or you
Yeah.
could probably, there's loads of things unsportsmanlike you could do, like you could fiddle with your card deck. I'm sure there's some pretty.
I've seen that on camera. Someone switching cards on the deck while their opponent was
Really?
looking. Yep, seen that happen on camera. It happens. I'm afraid it does happen. And
So let's say you as a referee spot this. Then what's then the next course of action?
If I spot something like that, if I spotted somebody like fudging through their card deck,
Mm-hmm.
I would come and say, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" And I called them out on it. I wouldn't just like red card. What are you doing? Because maybe there's something happening on the game between the players that I don't understand.
Yeah.
And that's the first rule. You question it. But I question it and question in front of the opponent.
Okay.
And the opponent goes, "Yeah, what are you doing?" Then we've got a problem here. And then it's a case of, look, that is that. No. And if I caught somebody fudging away through the card deck, that to me would be a red card.
Okay.
Whether I ejected them from the event or not would be another question. But I would definitely, again, it depends on what turn are we on, what round, what turn are we in the game and stuff like that. But it's definitely a yellow, if not a red card.
So what's a yellow card?
Because you're deliberately cheating by fudging your deck.
Yeah.
It's not accidental. It is deliberate. A yellow card is, we'll say, repeated instances.
Okay.
So repeated instances of slow play, repeated instances of unsporting behavior, or a very particular, very extreme example of something very unsporting, or being very, very slow, deliberately slow, deliberately unsporting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very clear cut that it was intended deliberately as well. So it's like, you should not do that. End of story.
So
prime example, can give 2 examples in ETC. So one was in a game where I got called over because the time was an issue in the game, and I'm watching the game, and the one guy had some gene sealers. He's like, he literally all he had was gene sealers and a hive tyrant left on the board, and he moved his gene sealers, and then he shot off his hive tyrant, and then afterwards he went, sorry, he double moved his sealers with the swarm lord, but after he double moved, he went, "Oh, sorry, I forgot to cast catalyst on them." And his opponent went, "Oh, tough luck.
Yeah.
You can't do it."
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you look at the board, the only unit on the board are the Steelers and the Swarm Lord, and the Steelers are going to have to charge, and he's going to lose anyway. It's like, why do you not let your opponent do that? It's obvious that's going to happen. It's not like it's affected by the move the Steeler makes. That was always going to happen. Yeah. Just let him do it. And that to me is unsporting. It's like when you do this clear intent, and you just say, no, you can't do that. You're trying to get a gotcha moment on someone.
Yeah.
Flip side is, there was another game where I got called over at the start of a turn. So in the previous turn had been a large combat, and one player had then consolidated his models onto a unit of the other player. His opponent, at the start of his turn, the first thing he does is move that unit away, the one to be consolidated onto, and then shoots of them. And his opponent's like, no, I was in combat. I engaged you. You can't shoot. You fell back. And his opponent's going, no, I wasn't engaged. I actually asked him, well, I started asking the guy questions, and his answer was just, I don't remember. Like, can you just tell me where your models were? I don't remember. Can you tell me where his model? I don't remember. It's like, when did this happen? 2 or 3 minutes ago. Has anything else happened? I drew cards. Anything else? No. Right, there's no chance you can't remember.
Yeah.
You're deliberately saying this because you want me as referee to say, let's roll dice on a 4 up it's you or a 4 up it's you.
Yeah.
So in that case, it's so obvious. To me, it's so obvious. You cannot not remember something that's literally just happened that second.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I'm not having that. You're getting a yellow card. Do not do this again.
So here's a question for you then, Neil. So let's say, I don't know, I've got Dark Eldar, right?
Yeah.
And I've got a feel no pain roll of a 6-up. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say you shoot at it with 1 unit and I forget to roll, let's say I lose 3 models and I forgot to roll my 3 feel no pains.
Yeah.
And then in the next shooting phase, or in the next unit comes to shoot, they shoot at those witches or whatever, and you do the last 2 wounds and I say, oh, I've got my feel no pains. Oh, and I didn't roll them for the last turn. What happens there, or the last, literally the unit just before?
The last shot, yeah.
Last shot.
If it was the last turn, I'd be like, you forgot. Yeah. I'd ask the opponent, is it okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's a simple thing. I play Imperial Knights. I sometimes play Tyrannus Knights. They have the feel no pain. And I do forget sometimes, like, oh crap, I've forgotten. And it's in this shooting phase, like, do you mind?
Yeah.
And that's a simple one. And I'll just say, do you mind? And if the opponent says no, I'm cool with that.
Mm-hmm. Because
it's a 6-up. It's not, the odds I will say are not stacked in my favour to start with.
Yeah.
And it's fine. And that's okay. That's what's good. And 99% of opponents will say that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you're playing a game where you agree with your opponent, let's play with intent, let's not, this side, then your opponent should be letting you do it. It's not a biggie. If it is a thing that would have a large, would affect decisions being made. So if, for example, he shot at your witches of the first unit, and you passed all your feel no pains, would he then shoot at the other units or not? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's never cut and dry, which is why, as a referee, you've always got to look at what's happening in front of you. The ITC, DTC have the code of conduct that say X, Y, Z, but it also says all decisions are made by referees.
Yeah.
Because it's never cut and dry.
It's like, for example, in one of my games that I mentioned, my opponent forgot to move their flyer. Mm-hmm. And he said, I've forgotten to move my flyer because we're in the shooting phase, the psychic phase had been done and everything. He's like, do you mind if I move it? And I could have just said, unfortunately, you didn't, it's exploded. And that would have been a kill point to me, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I said, go on, move it away. And I think that's no harm, no foul, right? I think
it's still his turn.
Yeah.
You've not had to do anything. You've not had to make any decisions based on where that flyer is.
Yeah.
So that's fine. If it was the start of your turn, then it's like, well, wait a minute. Now decisions have been made based on false information. Mm-hmm. Then it becomes like, I would say, no taking backies then.
Yeah.
So,
and especially like if you forget to charge that unit in, which all of a sudden you might have, I might have spent 2 CPs to to whatever it might be, not heroically intervene. Interrupt, exactly. So I think at that point, so that's very different, and I think that's just where you need to have a good dialogue. But I've certainly been in those situations where I've said, I'm just going to do this. I declared my intent with my opponent what I was going to do, just did something else, and then said, all right, I'm just going to go back and do that because I'd already had that dialogue. And then they said, but that's quite big though, isn't it?
But you see, I'd be like, well, we agreed to play with intent.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, this does happen, that you will agree something, you'll agree to play with an opponent, and then your opponent's losing, or your opponent makes a mistake, and suddenly they want to throw the intent out the door. And I'd just be like, I'm sorry, mate. We have been playing with intent all game. We agreed this is how we're going to play. I made my intent clear.
Yeah.
And you have not made any decisions, done anything They'll be affected by this movement, by this unit moving or not, so I'm moving it.
Because
And then opponent still says no, I'll be like, okay, just fair thing, I'll go grab a TO, you know. And sorry, I just dropped my phone.
Because I've certainly had that when earlier in that same game, I let them get away with something pretty big. You know, they perils, rolled all the damage, and I said, by the way, that's 6-inch range, not 3.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, I'm going to go back and re-roll that. And he'd already rolled damage rolls for other bits and bobs. And I said, look, oh, fine, just go ahead and do it. But maybe if he'd have just rolled 1 damage on each thing, maybe he wouldn't have gone back and did that. So
that's it.
And I thought I was very much that. Probably I shouldn't have let them actually get away with, because there'd been so many rolls in between going back to a certain re-roll. It's a bit like, are you going to re-roll that 4 up on your knight, and all of a sudden, and he's got 6 wounds left, and you're being shot by a D6 weapon. You're like, oh, well, you see him roll that 6. You're like, well, I'm just going to go and re-roll that 4 now.
It's like, no, that's a bit late. And it's common sense. As it comes back to, is you being able to redo, like take back that thing, you're going to have an effect on what on everything on what your opponent has done from the point that they should have, say, moved or saved, whatever, you know.
Or subsequent rolls, I suppose, are also important.
Has it affected your opponent's? Has it affected your opponent's decisions?
Yeah.
Now, some could argue, of course, this because your opponent is sitting there reevaluating what they're going to do next all the time. But have they had an opportunity to do something that would be affected by that thing being changed?
Yeah.
The answer is no. Let them do it, because again, it's about being the best general.
Yeah.
And when it's game 3 on the second day of a weekend and stuff, we're all forgetting things, and you don't want to win a game. If you won the game because like you say, I don't let you charge. You forgot to charge. You said you're going to charge. I don't let you, and I win the game because of that. Is that really going to be the story I want to tell my friends about how I won this last game?
Yeah.
I won it because he forgot something.
Yeah. So here's another question for you, Neil. In regards to then, so I've got a really good idea of what someone would have to do to get a yellow card.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things I want to throw a couple of scenarios at you. All right.
Oh, sorry. One last thing with the yellow cards and that. Obviously, being aggressive towards your opponent.
Okay.
Being aggressive, bullying your opponent, those kind of things. Absolute zero tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
At ETC this year, I heard 2 people like arguing at the table. And then I also heard the words, I'm going to punch you in the face. And I flew around and I said, I gave them both a bollocking. I treated them like school children. I sent them into the opposite corners and all this stuff.
So what happened to the game then at that point?
And I talked to the coaches, so the coaches were there, and the coaches explained what they were arguing over, and it was nothing.
Right.
And both coaches agree it was nothing. And they're like, we're really kind of embarrassed. These 2 guys are like this. And so I brought them back and I told them in those certain terms, you're lucky because one of you guys said this, and you're lucky I don't recognize your voices, because if I knew who said I'm going to punch you, you'd be out the door.
Yeah.
So
in that been immediate red card.
So, immediate red card, because you're not threatening your opponent.
Yeah.
So if I hear any of you guys argue the rest of the weekend or shout at your opponent, someone's going to throw you out. Agreed? They also stood there like little chastised children. And the thing was, in the next couple of turns, they wouldn't even talk to each other. They get the coaches to talk to each other. I can't tell him this, tell him. But by the end of the game, they stood there laughing and joking with each other, and they completely forgotten about it 2 hours later.
Okay.
It was so pathetic, and I told them in uncertain terms. But yeah, bullying your opponent, shouting at your opponent, intimidating your opponent, zero tolerance. I would hope every TO out there has the same attitude to that, because I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
And then TOs do nothing about it.
Yeah.
Which is not.
Okay. So let's say, okay, let me throw an example at you. Let's say it's a very, very close game. Okay. Mm-hmm. And maybe this doesn't affect so much in a team, but I suppose it does. Every point counts, right? So let's say somebody says, I want to do this. They want to play a stratagem. Let's say what's it called? The perfect ambush, is it? It 3? Is it? I think it's 3 CPs, right? To do the ambush. So let's say they use let's say fight against like a really big, impactful stratagem.
Yep.
Let's say, or they want to vect, and they're like, yeah, I want to vect your stratagem. It costs 3 CPs. Mm-hmm. And your opponent goes, No, I think it's 4. I think it's 4 CPs. And you go, well, I don't have my book on me. It's 3 CPs. So what happens at this? I mean, ETC is a bit different. I mean, GW, there's lots of paperwork. There's lots of FAQs here. There's lots of this, a lot of that. You know, let's say your book doesn't say it because it's in, you know, like an old one or whatever, and it hasn't been updated. What if the player doesn't have their paperwork? What then happens?
You need to get someone who has it.
Okay.
You need to find that codex. You need to be able to show your opponent that you're correct.
And whose time is this on?
I would say it's on the player who doesn't have the book with them.
Okay.
Because I think every single tournament I know, I think it's in the ITC, ETC, GW, all tournaments I know say, you know, things bring with you, your models, some glue, the rules for your army.
Yeah.
You know, it's, if you haven't, I mean, yes, GW does the erratas and stuff like that, but as a competitive player, we're aware of erratas, we're aware of FAQs. If you, maybe it's your first ever tournament, sure, you might not be aware. And that happens. I've heard about that. Yeah, first ever tournament, the guys that know there's a thing called chapter approved. It happens. But that's a rare case. You know?
Yeah.
If you haven't got your book, and I've done it, I've forgotten my book, and I've gone to tournament without my book, and so I've done so everything I can to beg, borrow, scrounge it. You know, ask a TO, does he have one? He's got a spare one, they can bring it with them, and stuff like that. Or you know, I've gone on my phone, with your smartphones, and I've spent the data to search on certain Russian Facebook sites for the copy of it and stuff. There are ways around that, and if ultimately you still don't have it during the game, you get that kind of question, well then it's on your clock to go find the TO to ask him to borrow a book, or to look up and down the rows to find someone who's got a book. And that happened at ETC a couple of times. I was flabbergasted, like people didn't have the rule books with them or the codexes with them. I'm like, you're asking me a question and you don't have the rule book to show me.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't bring it with me.
Yeah.
You know, so to me that's basic gaming stuff, and if you don't have it, you have to find it.
So let's say then the next part to my question, this is a double loaded question. Let's say this player does something and they know full well that they've basically said it's 3 CPs and it should have been 4 or whatever, and this then thing led them to winning the game at the very end. The player then just took them on their word because they think, obviously, you know your rules, you know, and they don't want to question absolutely everything, right? You don't want to be that guy that just goes, oh, can you show me? Oh, can you show me? Because, again, that's unsportsmanlike as well.
Yeah.
So you realise, you have a chat with your mate, and he's like, actually, hang on a minute, no, that's not right. And you then go and tell a TO, obviously the game is ended by this point, you know, it could be 2 minutes after you've just submitted scores.
Yeah.
What then happens? What would you do in this case?
If that happened, I would, as a TO, go talk to pro players and ask them, you know, did this happen? Did this thing happen? And try to get a resolution. You know, and if the player admits that, yeah, I did only use 3 CPs, it was 4, then you ask them, you know, what do you want to do? You know, most times, most people are reasonable adults and they'll work out a solution. You know, I did this. It was back in 6th or 6th ed. It was. I think it was at a tournament. It was just when the book had been released, and I had the psychic cards. As I bought the deck of cards. Yeah. So I'm using force to make. I had a librarian and a unit of assault terminators, and some had lightning bolts. And I used a force card because the card said the librarian and his unit's weapons all become instant death. So I ran into a unit like 6 Talos, went, killed all the Talos. Wow, I win the game. And after the game, someone pointed out to me, it was like 40 minutes after the game. Someone pointed out to me, Neil, the cards are different from what's in the rulebook. In the rulebook, it says the librarian and his unit that have with force weapons. On the card, the word force was missed out. So you can't make him all instant death like that. And I was like, I spoke to my opponent and said, look, this has happened. I want to give you a 20-0 because I've won the game massively and I should have won it. What do you want to do? And he's like, oh, so I want to give you a 20-0. And the guy went, actually, can we just call it a 10-10? I was willing to give the guy 20-0 at that point. Right, okay. I realized that I had, unintentionally, cheated him out win.
Yeah. So it was very good of you to do that, yeah.
You have a dialogue with your opponent And then if the guy's making a big fuss about it, if the ref, and come back to the original question, so, but if the flip side of it is, and it's someone pointed it out to me, and I didn't do anything about it, and then, the ref TO's asking me what did I do, and I'm like, no, I didn't do that, I didn't do that. It becomes very hard, because it comes back to this he said, who said, he said, she said thing. And you can't say, I believe you over you.
Yeah.
Just like that, you can't. So all you can do is be like, well, that's how it is, guys. Do not make that mistake again. And then if you, as a TO or referee, would hear later, actually, that's happened before, or it happens again, then it's a case of retrospectively going back. And quite brutally, if that's the case and it happens again, then zero his games.
Yeah.
At that point, you've been warned. I'd be careful. I gave you the benefit of the doubt, but you're actually doing it deliberately. So now you're going to get a card. Now you're going to get a red card off me because it's deliberate.
Yeah.
So again, all these are so specific. It's not easy. It's down to the TO to use their best judgment.
No, I can appreciate that. Yeah.
But importantly, TOs, referees, don't make snap calls. If you can go talk to somebody before making a decision, do that. I mean, at ETC, we have a process. We have 5 referees, and any decision, any ruling that's not written down, we can't find the answer in a book or codex or FAQ, or we're going to be penalising someone or warning someone for their behaviour or anything. We always go and find 2 other referees, and we always talk. Say, this is the situation. Explain it. Look at it, and then I want to do this, and then the referees say yes or no. That's too harsh, and it's decided as a group. So you're remaining as impartial as you can. Just like on a rugby pitch, I'm a rugby referee as well. On a rugby pitch, if something's happened, the linesmen get called in. The linesmen, the referee will all talk. I think this should happen. I've seen this and I believe this.
Mm-hmm.
And the linesmen were like, yes or no. I think even though they don't even do it in football, but they've got the VAR and they've got the touch judge, the linesmen for football. They're all linked up, and they also will sometimes talk to each other. If you're going to make a decision about penalising someone, about carding someone, about ejecting someone in the venue, make sure you're making the right decision. And therefore, to make sure you're doing the right thing, ask somebody else. Get the opinion of 1 or 2 people. If you're a TO and it's a small RTT, it's just you on your own, ask the opinion of a couple of players you respect.
Yeah.
A level-headed. And also don't name names, just say, this has happened on this day. This thing's happened. If you're at a large event, grab some other people. I mean, this is coming to London GT. It's a conversation I had with Zach. I'm going to be there, one of the head referees at London GT, and it's been helping him out, making sure, obviously, the 400 people the referees have got, how do we manage it? And same for Atlanta, the Atlanta Open, the $10,000 tournaments in December in America. Been talking to the guys there, Brad, about how to make sure you empower your referees to make the right decisions and to penalise when you can, but make sure they're giving the right penalties for the right reasons. So it's fluid.
Well, I'm really pleased to hear that you're going to be the LGT.
Yeah,
because I'm going to be there. So
I'm refereeing. I don't know if I'm head ref or assistant head ref, or so we're there. So
if you could bring that loaded dice for me, that would be great. So I can.
It's actually vanished. Somebody got it on Sunday night. But you can go on. But David's the Polish head ref.
Okay.
The one who had Dave DEJV on his back. He actually found them on the internet.
Did he?
And they were called Dungeons and Dragons Character Builders. Because a pack of 3. So you can, we can buy them on the internet if you really want to.
Mate, that's wicked. And I mean, there's so many questions I've got for you, but I don't want to take up too much more of your time, Neil.
And I talk too much.
Mate, honestly, it's been a really good insight, because I think you've given some really good top tips for people to take away. So what I've learned from today, just from speaking to you, is if there's a situation you're not comfortable with, go and get a TO. When you go find that TO, you just have to explain what you're uncomfortable with. You don't need to point a finger. You don't need to shout and curse and say, he's cheating because of this. You just need to say, look, I'm being made to feel like this. Something's a bit off. Could you mind just giving our game a bit of an overview from a bit of a distance, and nip it in the bud straight away. And if you have felt that there's been a few offences, again, go tell a TO in the moment, so that this person can then be watched for the rest of the tournament. Because there is, like you said, you can't just go with the opinion of whoever said it. You need to watch and make up your own evaluation if they have cheated or whatever. And I think now the game is becoming a lot more heavily streamed, a lot more vocal as well. I think it's going to become increasingly harder for these people to get away from it from tournament to tournament. You know, I had a really bad experience at Warhammer World, not, you know, back in December. Really bad experience. The worst game of 40K I've ever had.
I remember hearing it on your on the YouTube channel when you were talking about it.
And I told the guy, this has been the worst game of 40K I've ever had. You know, and some people said, oh, you should name him and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, well, I probably won't at this point, but if it happens again to me, then that's a different situation, because I gave him the benefit of the doubt. But at the time, and it's one of those things that I think now these players will unfortunately get reputation. They will start getting banned from events. People refuse to play them, whatever it might be. You know, I wouldn't have any qualms about it. If I knew that someone cheated me before, I'd say, look, mate, just after 20-0. I don't want to spend 3 hours playing you, because I know it's going to be literally like sticking needles in my eyes. But that's unfortunate, because obviously I have to give away a win, for example, unnecessarily, just because I drew some person that, you know, you don't want to play, whatever. But or I'll say, look, can we get a TO to watch our game? Well, can we use a chess clock? Can we use the same shared dice pot? And then there's ways you can get around that as well. So but I think the game's certainly moving in a more professional outlook. And I think the more tournaments that can get you, Neil, at their events, the better. Genuinely.
It would be nice, yeah.
No, I genuinely think that, because you've got such a good way and observations of the game, you'd also help those TOs relieve a lot of, you know, stress about the event, and also mentor any of the referees as well, or budding referees in the game. So, because playing's not for everybody, right? Some people prefer to coach, or they prefer to manage, or they prefer to referee, and that's why we have all these roles in sport. So it's great to hear you going. Are you going to the Atlanta one, or are you just working remotely with them?
No, I'm working remotely with them. There was, I know, like Nick, Adam Rabbits, Gonyo, all those guys are like, oh, you need to bring Neil over, but it's $600 to $900 for the flights to bring me from Sweden to Atlanta and stuff like that. You know, the guy said realistically he'd love to. You know, he hasn't budgeted for me, so he'd have to find, you know, sponsorship for extra money, which is fine. But at the same time, in America, and I've told him, you know, you've got Adam and John at LVO, you've got Phil heads up Nova. I mean, obviously Washington to Atlanta's not that far. You get Phil down from nowhere. These are amazing. These are amazing referees as well. These are guys who referee some of the biggest events in the world consistently. You know, these are guys that when the ITC code of conduct was written, you know, it's like Reese got in touch with me, and these guys are also involved in the writing of these. So the behaviours I exhibit, I'm not the only one in the world that does it. So in America, you've got some fantastic referees, and this is a conversation that's been had. You know, a lot of people told me, like, Neil, you need to make a business. You can make a business of this. You could, like, you know, like yourself, set up a channel where you can help you can do coaching for TOs and stuff. You could obviously hit Patreon, where people, you know, who'd like give you money to enable you to attend events when necessary. Maybe the event itself doesn't have the financial means to bring you, but if players were to subscribe to you and pay like a small amount of money each month, then you'd have that money to go to certain events and whatnot. And that's a really awesome idea, and it's something that's been talked about with me, with the ITC people as well, about how, because the ITC also talk about, we've got the code of conduct, now they want to develop the TOs. They're going to implement this structure where they have regional reps, so like a person who will help his region develop, and the flip side of that is referees. They say 40K is becoming, we'll say, professional. One way or another. More and more money is getting involved. You know, you've got Nick, obviously well known, likes the game table. He's now brought on Eric from Team Australia. Is now going to be working with Nick. So that's 2 full-time professional players now that we know of. Obviously, you've got the Battle Brothers, Juice and Sean. They're doing their stuff. You've got Vanguard Tactics, you know, Manny, Dan, and Adam with Glasshammer. And then you've got the big events like LVO, ITC, Adepticon, Nova. They're all cash events. The Atlanta Open is going to be a big cash event. So you need professional players. You need to have the right kind of people to manage the events and manage the behaviors.
Yeah, definitely.
So and that's, I believe it. I vehemently believe that 40K can become an esport. And for it to be as good as it can be, you need to have great players, but also great TOs, great terrain, and great referees.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think in, good coverage and the
Yeah.
rest of it. So, Neil, it's been an absolute pleasure. So my next question to you, Neil, and I appreciate this might not be something that you've got set up at the moment. Where can
Yeah.
people, maybe they're a TO listening, they think, do you know what, I might budget an extra £5 or £10 off everyone so I can fly Neil over, or maybe I've got some questions for him or whatever. Where can they get in contact with you, Neil?
Yeah. So I am planning, I'm working with yourself, with Scar and a few other people to work out to create something. Nothing's been set up yet. So right now, the easiest way to find me is you can find me on Facebook. Just search my name, Neil Kerr, Kerr. Obviously, you can go to like Vanguard's Facebook page, Glasshammer's. You'll see me because I'm on there. You'll see me as like one of the members there. You can find me that way.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to the ETC website, the ETC forums. You can find me there as Scuzz, SKCUZZ.
Okay.
Right now, they're the easiest places to find me. If you can't find me, talk to somebody in an ETC team.
Yep.
So if you don't know anyone, but you're in England, talk to Josh Roberts, one of the ETC players.
Yep.
There are people. If you get in contact with anyone in the ETC, they'll be able to put you in touch.
Well, if they're watching this or listening to this podcast, then obviously they can reach out to us at Vanguard Tactics, and I can.
Absolutely.
But for now, it's obviously you on Facebook until we get Neil Kerr, the professional 40K referee.
Yeah.
That's the that Facebook page coming soon.
Yeah, ultimate, unlimited power.
That's it. That's it, mate. Perfect. Well, Neil, mate, thanks so much for this. I really appreciate it, and have you on again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, buddy.
All right, mate. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.